Hey guys, Vlad back here with another video. Today I'm going to be showing you guys my Springan Dogmatica deck. I will put a little disclaimer that this isn't the only way to play this deck. There's a couple of ways to play Springan, and this is just one of the many ways that you can play it. Second disclaimer, this is not a budget-friendly version, I will say before I start. So make of that what you will. Anyway, let's get quickly into the deck profile. So I'm going to quickly just go over at what the Springans are. So all of the Springans have the exact same one shared effect between all of them, between all the main deck monsters, which is if they're in your hand, field, or graveyard, you can target a Springan XYZ monster you control, and they attach themselves to that monster as their material. And the entire gimmick of this deck is that they have a field spell called the Great Sand Sea Gold Golganda, which allows you to summon out a Springans XYZ monster from your extra deck just by discarding a Springans card. And the reason why for the XYZ material attaching effect is because obviously the monster you summon off this won't have any XYZ material, so it's nice to have to put an ammo onto your XYZ monster. Now, at the moment we only have the one XYZ monster, which is the Springans Ship X-Blower. However, after Lightning Overdrive, this deck will get a huge boost with a rank 4 that they're getting, which will be a really nice addition to the deck. Helps a lot with the deck. It's a Foolish Burial, and this one's nice as well. So being able to just attach a material, any number of materials from it, and then you just get to destroy cards in a crosshair, which is a really cool little effect that it has. So that's basically like the quick gist of it. I'll quickly go into the monsters and the profile now. So I'm playing only 2 copies of Rocky. I'm not entirely sure about Rocky. You could just play 3 of this, but the problem with the Springans I've found in the Blazing Vortex format is the fact that they don't really have too much synergy. It's really hard to get your level 4 going, and the only reason why I'm playing these Springans names is just to discard for the Gold Sea Gold Golganda. And this is just nice for a little loop with the next Springans monster which I'm going to be showing is the Pedor, or, Peter. This one, so what Rocky does is on summon, it gets to target a Great Golganda in the graveyard or a Springans monster in your graveyard and add it to your hand. And then it has a second Springans effect, and then what Pedor does is that it contributed to summon a Springans in your graveyard. So as you can see the little synergy here, you summon Pedor, you tribute itself to summon back Rocky, Rocky adds back Pedor, and then you have a little loop going on there. That's pretty cool and all, but it doesn't really help us achieve all that much at the current point in time. However, Pedor is significantly better because it does target any Springan in your graveyard, so that is good to keep in mind. To special summon it, rather. Next, we're playing 2 copies of Branga, and also 2 copies of Captain Sargus. So what Branga is that you can banish it from the graveyard along with a Springans card with a different name from your graveyard, and then you can add a Springans card from your deck to your hand. That's pretty good. They do have spells and they do have traps as far as I'm aware. They also have a spell. But at the moment, you're only realistically going to be searching the monsters off of this. So I think Springans Watch is pretty good too. And there's also another spell card for this that coming out in the next set, which is also really nice. This is just a night card that you can bin off of the new XYZ whenever that comes out. But for the moment, it's not the best card. It's not a fantastic card, unfortunately, along with the other Springans. And then here's one of the better ones. This is Springans Captain Sargus. So I'm only playing 2 of him. Well, that's for a very good reason, because he's easily tutorable with another engine we are playing in this deck. And basically, it is during your opponent's turn, you can detach the material from an XYZ monster you control, target a face-up card in the field, and destroy it. And that's pretty good. Yeah, that's really it. It's just a Dryden. And you can summon this in the end phase with the themed Titaniclad, or Alba's fusion monster of the deck, which is the Sprint, which I'll go into a little bit later. This is a really nice effect. It's just a Trident. It's just fine. It's not fantastic, but that's kind of what this deck is at the moment. It is just fine. It doesn't do anything exactly mind-blowing. Next up, for a bit of more consistency, I'm playing 3 copies of Pathfinder until, once again, Lightning Overdrive. I feel like this is kind of a necessary card to play in the deck. It does give you a bit more versatility after siding, because you can play things like Mystic Mine and Necro Valley to really stop your opponent in their tracks. This card's just a nice utility card, also it's just good. It's a nice consistency card also. And the next one part of the non-budget of this deck is the Dogmatica package. The Dogmatica package, I feel, is probably the best thing to combine the Springans with at the moment, just because of the fact that you're serving such a powerful card, and this allows you to go second really easily, as well as just the absolute utility you get with the Dogmatica cards is just Very, very strong, and I would not give it up for anything, especially seeing the fact as you're always going to be having an extra direct monster on the field, so special summoning Ecclesia from the hand is pretty easy, along with turning on your Fleur-de-Lis. So it's kind of a no-brainer to kind of put them in. They do have pretty good synergy with them. Next for hand traps, I'm just playing the 3 copies of Ash Blossom, 3 copies of Nibiru, and then also 3 copies of Gamma and Driver. As you can see, these are honestly kind of like standard hand traps. You could theoretically play Phantasma in this deck, but my problem with Phantasma is that the hand traps you really want to draw into is like Nibiru, and I really don't like that it conflicts with Gamma, so I'm just not playing Phantasma in this deck. However, you can play Phantasma if you really do want to. Other things you can run in this deck is like Pankratops and Alpha, but I think Gamma is just like a nice little round off for the hand traps. You could just play more hand traps if you do want to though. Gamma is super powerful in this deck. There is a lot of times where your opponent can hand trap you before you put a monster on the board, so that's always nice, especially with things like Nadir Servant 2. And also the Gold Koganda, which is nice too. So yeah. Also, you are able to turn this Gamma live even after you use your Gold Koganda, because the Explorer can banish itself. So all the Springans XYZ monsters, which we only have one of at the moment, it's basically a wind-up rabbit during your opponent's main phase or battle phase. So it can banish itself until your standby phase, is it? It just banishes itself until the end phase. So that's pretty good because it can make it so you can use Gamma, which is pretty nice, being able to clear a field. So that means if you draw a Gamma later on, it's still a good card. It's still like usable. And then anyway, for the spells, we have the main field spell of the deck, the main bread and butter, literally the only card you want to see in this deck, which is the Great Sea, Sand Sea, the Gold Koganda. So I brushed over its effect previously, but I'll just quickly go over exactly what it does. So while it's on the field, all your Springan XYZ monsters gain 1,000 attack, and then you can only use each of the following effects of it once per turn. So if you control no Springans XYZs, you can discard Springans card and then summon the XYZ monster from your extra deck. And then its second effect is if a Springans you control leaves the field, a face of XYZ you control leaves the field by card effect, you can target a monster your opponent controls and can't attack the rest of its turn. Now, that second effect isn't too great, but obviously the summoning any XYZ from your extra deck is a pretty strong effect. And then also just being able to load it up with ammunition with the little Springans is pretty nice, and you're just able to blow up your opponent's stuff in a crosshair, and then you're able to sack this off during your opponent's turn, and then it comes back to safety, and you put the Springans back on top of it, and then you're able to keep destroying your opponent's cards. Other cool thing of this is that it does stop you from dying, which is kind of nice. So you can keep that in mind while playing this deck. Also, the 1,000 attack point boost isn't the worst thing on the planet. And then next, for another consistency boost, is 3 copies of Springans Watch. So this is, I'll probably say this is probably the best card in the deck, which is, so on activation, it can add a Great Sansi Gold Koganda from deck to your hand. And if the Gold Koganda is already in your field zone, you can apply this effect instead, which is you can add a Springan from deck to hand, and then send a Springan from deck to grave. This is exactly why I'm playing Pathfinder. The second effect of Springan's Watch is absolutely amazing, but also just it being a terraforming is also just good enough. Speaking of, we are also playing the 1 copy of terraforming because field spell deck, you do need to see your field spell. How in this build in particular, I'm not actually running Mystic Mine in the main deck, which I probably should, and now that I'm recording this, it definitely should be in the deck. So just put Mystic Mine here. You might as well. Maybe I don't know. The Mystic Mine's kind of weird in the format, so maybe you don't even want to bother maining it. And then next up, once again, non-budget part of the deck, which is Nadir Servant. This card's absolutely amazing in this deck. Once again, Ecclesia has good synergy because you always have an extra deck monster on the field, but also the Sprint Dragon, the Titaniclad, the Albus monster of this deck, allows you to, just like Titaniclad, allow you to special summon a Springan from your deck, which is very good because it can summon Captain Sargus, so you can end with Captain Sargus, an Ecclesia, Punishment, and an Explorer, which is a lot of disruption on your opponent's turn. So yeah, and obviously the other things you can send off of Nadir Servant are pretty good too. Or so I heard. And then next, we're playing, once again, 3 copies of Pot of Prosperity. This is a no-brainer to put in a lot of decks. This deck doesn't really have anything that draws. It doesn't have that many cards that draw cards in general. I'm just going to say I'm playing Extravagance as well. I'm playing a lot of 3-ofs in my extra deck, so I don't really mind banishing a few of them. It does suck banishing the Explorer, and this does get a lot. This is really, really dodgy to play. You can actually just opt to not run this. This is a 41 card deck. You could maybe play Mystic Mine instead of the Extrav. But yeah, Prosperity, absolutely amazing card. Literally get to dig to whatever card you need, especially in a deck like this where you only really need one extra deck card, which is just the Explorer, and like maybe Entis, I guess. So yeah, it just lets you dig into any card in your deck. When you start with your 5 cards, and then you activate Prosperity, you banish 6, you are essentially seeing a quarter of your deck on your first turn, which is, if you ask me, that's pretty good. Don't know what else to tell you. And then for the last 2 cards in the deck, it's just 2 copies of Dogmatic of Punishment. I don't have a 3rd copy in this house, so we're only running 2. That is the... Yep. I guess I will explain further. Dogmatic of Punishment is actually really, really strong in this deck, just because you don't summon from the extra deck all that often, and also your extra deck monster keeps coming back every single turn, so you don't really have to worry about the restriction of this. Now, it does suck when you do get interrupted, like, just say if you try to blink out with the Explorer, and it gets destroyed by some kind of other card effect. It does suck, and then when you're locked under punishment as well. However, those situations are few and far between, and you should be okay just because punishment got you so much advantage in the first place. For the extra deck, we're playing 3 copies of the Explorer. We're playing Extravagance, we kind of do need to play 3 of this. 1 copy of Abyss Dweller. I'm not even sure if I want to run this. This was kind of just like a card I was just like, fine, I'll put it in. Because you do have level 4s in this deck, they can summon themselves, and it's like neat. You can like overlay like Ecclesia and one of your Springans to make Dweller, I guess. But this is like a very, very fringe situation that you'd be making Dweller, to be perfectly honest. Next, playing 2 copies of Zeus, once again, Extravagance, but also you're playing an XYZ deck. It makes sense to just put in a Zeus in there. Next, we're playing 3 Sprint, the Iron Dash Dragon, once again. 4 Nadir Servant, really, really strong. Lets you get us to Sargus, pretty nice. Or it can also get us to something like Peter or whatchamacallit, the Rocky, to be able to add back our Springans from grave. Cool. Other thing to know, obviously, you can summon this off. You send this off of punishment and then get something in the end phase. Unfortunately, there's not that many good Springans to summon or add off of Sprint when you're on punishment, so it doesn't come up all that much, unfortunately. Next we have 2 Titaniclad. I was even considering just not running Titaniclad at all, but there is just so much room in this extra deck that you can kind of just get away with it. Like, you can honestly just play, like, whatever you want here. You don't even have to, like, necessarily play 3 of everything, like, just for extra. Like I have, you can play things like Nightmare Phoenix, you can play Link Monsters. I'm not playing any Link Monsters because Link Monsters are lame, and Virtual Bolt has accustomed me to not playing a single Link Monster in any of my decks ever again. Next we have 2 copies of Ventus. Only 2. You could just play a 3rd of this, to be honest, but a 3rd realistically never really comes up. If you do banish 3 off of Extrav, boohoo. If you banish 1 off Extrav, it's completely fine, because we are running Omega to put back the Entices. Another great card to send off of punishment. And then 1 copy of Windpegs ad Ignister. Once again, this extra deck really, really does not matter. A lot of these are just punishment targets, and you can just pick and choose what punishment targets you really want. As for what the dream openings in this deck are, it's just a Nadir Servant, and I guess Goganda, and I guess Springan's Watch. This is like the dream opening. You just go Goganda, you activate Springan's Watch, you dump a Springan, you add a Springan, you discard a Springan for Goganda, you summon the dude, the level 8 dude, you activate the Servant, you send the Iron Dash Dragon, and then you add Ecclesia, you special Ecclesia, you add punishment, you set punishment. In the end phase, you get Sprint's effect to summon Sargus, and then you have like punishment plus Sargus plus nothing else really, because your extra monster doesn't actually do anything. So once again, this deck isn't the most competitive. Even after Lightning Overdrive, it probably still isn't the most competitive. However, I feel like this is a very fun deck to play, so if you're wanting to play on Dueling Book or whatever, feel free to copy this deck, and also just let me know what you guys think of this list below. What would you change? Now, obviously, it's not the most budget-friendly deck. Even I don't own the Dogmatica cards. I had to borrow those off of one of my housemates, because I already sold my Dogmatica stuff, because I was like, Megatons this year, etc. But yeah, anyway, I know there's other ways to build this deck, like with Time Thieves and whatever, but I really do think that Dogmatica is just the way to go at the moment. Maybe after Lightning Overdrive, there is better ways to play it. Anyway, guys, I've been the Hypnocorn himself, and let me know what you guys like in the next video. See you.